Welcome back to the Kingdom Educators podcast, everybody. Hasn't this been an incredible unit? We've been talking about self-talk and how that impacts our own thinking, but also our environment around us. And today I have a special guest with me, Jessica Klicka, and she comes to us from the world of counseling, but has a background in teaching. But the reason why I asked her to come on was because as we were talking, I became very aware of, oh, self-talk is very much connected to the way that our bodies feel. And sometimes in the world of education, we forget to do simple things like, oh, I need to go to the bathroom like 3 hours ago, or I'm feeling exhausted, but I'm not paying attention and taking care of myself. And so I thought it would be really great to have Jessica on today to talk about how we can do a better job caring for ourselves so that that internal thing that's happening can actually help us improve our self-talk more easily if we pay attention to our needs. So, welcome Jessica to the Kingdom Educators podcast.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yes. Okay, so I want to make sure and not miss this, but you have a
Okay.
background in education, which makes this a fun connection for you to be here with
Yeah.
us. Will you share a little
Yeah.
bit about that and then move us into self-regulation?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
So I knew from a very early age that I wanted to be a teacher. So from the time I was in elementary school, and so coming through, getting my degree, and I taught middle schoolers, which is also a place I never thought I'd find myself, is in middle school classrooms.
Me
So it's all
too.
kinds of fun, as you guys know, that are also middle school teachers.
Yes.
So
And
it's
probably
all
only
crazy.
half wanted to actually be
But
there, right?
Yes, no, and then I fell in love with them. I student taught that first year in seventh grade, and I thought I'm never leaving. So this is the
Oh,
best place. And yeah, and I did 8 years, you guys, with doing the middle schoolers. And I don't know, I think it was probably 4 or 5 years into it, we realized we also were like counselors, in the
yeah.
classroom. And so just through my own journey and different things God had placed on my heart, he said, you need to be there on a deeper level for these kiddos and their families. And
Yeah.
so pursued the master's degree. And then after a few years of doing both
Uh-huh. Ooh.
counseling and teaching,
Oh my
yeah,
goodness.
I don't recommend that one. That one's hard. I did it before I had kids. So
Yeah.
it's the only way. And
And
then,
you probably got counseling while you were doing all that, right?
oh, yes,
Oh my
that's a
goodness.
must. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's often a requirement you have to do while you're going through your program. And that's a
Yeah.
great requirement.
Yeah.
I'd had other counseling before, but you need it through the thick and thin. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so here we are. And now I've been doing counseling for 11 years. And I miss the classroom and I love
Yeah.
getting to help support teachers. So,
Yeah.
this is awesome.
Now, are your own
Yeah.
kids in school right now?
Yes, I have a kindergartner and a second grader now. So my
Oh,
baby is now in kindergarten and
oh,
off and away, like
yes.
big boys. So,
Oh,
yeah, seeing it from the other
exciting though.
side
I
now as a
know. Isn't
parent.
that so
Yeah.
different? Oh man.
Mm-hmm. A
Okay,
whole
so
different level.
Jessica, you work for a Christian counseling company out of Boulder, Colorado,
Hmm.
but you live in St. Augustine, Florida, which is so cool to be able to have the
Yes.
remote position.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
and will you share with us um now you work with teachers too, right? You say some come in.
I have
Awesome.
teachers. We help. We have a wide range of people that we help. But I know I've often gone into schools and do teachings for in services for teachers,
Yeah.
and just supporting them as they're figuring out what they're doing. Especially coming out of COVID years,
Mm-hmm.
there was so much that teachers were carrying and trying to manage. So really emphasized it then, and still love to help them with what they're doing even now. So
Yeah. No, that's
yeah,
so good. Yeah.
yeah.
So will you um move us into what does it mean to self-regulate and why do we even need to
Hmm.
do that? What does that look like
Yeah.
for us? Yeah.
So I'll just jump right in, you guys. I like to tell everybody I like to nerd out and just start going into a lot of the nervous system science.
That's
So
okay.
we operate within either a hyper, which is our sympathetic nervous system. That's people know that as our fight or flight. And
Yeah.
then we have our hypo, which is our parasympathetic nervous system, which is our collapse mode. And throughout the day, we actually are meant, God's design is that we fluctuate back and forth.
Okay.
And that in the middle is regulation. And so the visual is like a ramp
Hmm.
that we're on, and we go on one side and then we swing to the other. And the idea is to try to stay in the pocket in that middle of regulation as much as we can. That's where we have clarity of thought. That's where we have things like we can articulate how we're doing and how we're feeling. If
Hmm.
we go to either side too hard, we get hijacked.
Okay.
And often people are sitting in places of like the anxiety is that, oh my goodness, I have things coming up in the future. So I'm thinking about prepping for the next class, or I'm thinking about I have to do lunch duty later, or oh no, I have to do, detention after school and I didn't prep for this, so we're hijacked in the future.
Yeah.
Or right, that hypo, we get hijacked into the past. Darn, I shouldn't have said what I did to this parent. Now here I am feeling really bad or remorseful, or all of those
Hmm.
things that we go backwards. So the idea is that what we're going to talk about, or share, that I'm going to share today, is about how to stay in the present and attach to ourselves as much as we can, which helps us stay, like we'll talk about, grounded and present in our thoughts. So,
Oh, that's so good. Yeah. And I
mm-hmm,
I think I think it's just good for us to be aware that there's both sides because even while I'm thinking, I'm like, man, in a day,
mm-hmm,
in the teaching world, it
mm-hmm,
is really like all over. But like you said, just staying in that center so you can be present and not getting pulled
yeah,
backwards or forwards, but finding that middle ground
mm-hmm,
is the healthy place. I love
mm-hmm,
that. Okay.
yeah. And the other thing I'll add too is that we go into often a autopilot mode. And this one's really, I think, present for all of us given at different times given throughout the day, whether it's when we are driving to work and we're just kind of in our own thoughts, we don't pay attention really to what's going on around us, or our environment. And then once we get our day going, how often we're just like in routine. And we're thinking about, again, with the next thing, okay, I've set up their bell work, I'm getting this lesson going, I'm going to have this handout we're going to go over, we're going to have some discussion time, and then they're going to be doing homework, and we're just boom, boom, boom. And we're not really paying attention, one, to ourselves, or
Hmm.
really how well are we really gauging even the kids,
Yeah.
in the classroom, and checking in on that and slowing ourselves down and really noticing what's coming up, for
Hmm.
us and for them.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Because the
mhm.
demands, I think, feel so intense sometimes.
Yes.
And
Oh my
maybe
gosh, the clock
yeah.
dictates so much too. I remember just living by that, being like, okay, got
Yes.
10 minutes, 5 minutes. And, you feel very structured and you have to. So to be able to breathe in between moments, and to really take time and space for ourselves, even during
Mhm.
the class time, is tricky.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
hmm
You mentioned during our pre-talk that there's this thing called synergistic play, and it
hmm
helps us to grow healthier. And you're even suggesting like this would be a good thing to use with students as well.
hmm yeah.
How is this a self-care strategy and how could we implement it to gain
Yeah.
more health in our lives?
hmm So I'll share, that synergistic play therapy it's a type of play therapy that I use not only with my littles, when I got trained in it was really to help do play therapy, but what I learned through the course of being trained and then getting my certification is that it's really for every age. And I actually use it probably more with my adults. I kind of chuckle when I bring it up in the therapy room of, hey, can I introduce some play therapy techniques to you? And we just laugh because we're all, I think, children at heart, but we're all human. And so, what we learn about in synergistic play therapy is, a lot of nervous system, a lot of co regulation. We learn attunement. And some of that, well, it really starts with learning about ourselves and connecting to ourself
Yeah.
and knowing, okay, how is my body feeling right now? What flags is it giving me? And what do I need to do with that? Because if I'm not present with myself, I'm really probably not present with other people.
Mhm.
And in the playroom, it's me and a kiddo. In the classroom, right? It's us and our students. And so slowing ourselves down and going, okay, body, where are you at? All right, emotions, how are you feeling?
Mhm.
Because I'll sometimes joke with my clients that it's like we just exist in our head, and we
Yeah.
forget that everything else is still there
Yeah.
and it's telling us information, right, all day. And it's very easy to disconnect, from
Mm-hmm.
it for a lot of different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
So what we do is we talk about how us as the adults in a space, we represent the external regulators.
Ooh.
And yes, I love this because I talk to parents about this in the home, us as the therapist in the counseling room, and then teachers in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
And so our capacity, whether we get heard about your window of tolerance, if it's wide and we've got good capacity, the others in the space with us are going to oscillate within it just like us. And so
Okay.
if our window is wide, they'll feel that, they'll have more capacity too, and they can kind of oscillate within that. If it gets squished on any given day at any given time, now our window is tiny and everybody inside of it is like little ping pong balls going to
Mm-hmm.
everybody, and we feed off of each other's energy.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll give a
Does
quick
that,
example.
can I
Yeah,
ask real quick though, Jessica, when you're saying
sure.
that, does that mean oscillating between the hypo and the
Yes, the hyper.
hyper?
Yeah.
Is that
Mm-hmm.
so? If we are going way over this way or way over that way, then our students will do the same thing. Is that what we're
Yeah,
talking
they'll have
about? Or is it the
greater
stress level?
capacity.
Okay.
It's both,
Okay.
because we're willing to kind of feel both, right? When you're saying that we're oscillating
Okay.
through,
Mm-hmm.
and it is stress level. So it's both, I would say, to answer that's a great question.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we're, and I tell adults, right? So whether it's parents, in this case, all of you awesome educators, the more you're attuned to yourself, aware of where you're at and what you're going through, your
Mm-hmm.
window is going to feel better. It's going to feel wider. It's going to feel like there's more capacity.
Okay.
And so one instance might feel one way, and all of a sudden, if your window is shrunk, it's you feel more irritable, right? You're more
Okay.
on edge.
Mm-hmm.
Because I even remember a specific day when I was teaching, and I had my grandfather was in the hospital, and I knew I was feeling less capacity at
Mm-hmm.
that day. We were more on edge. We were waiting for calls from the hospital. And this is something I think I would talk about maybe later, but I'll just say it here is naming it to tame it. Tell your student,
Mm-hmm.
hey, I'm having a day.
Yeah.
It's going to be, I'm a little more emotional, and
Mm-hmm.
I was very honest with my students. I said, my grandpa is in the hospital. If I'm not really here well, or if I, feel a little more stressed to you guys, that's why.
Mm-hmm. And they
It's
probably
not
appreciate
you.
that.
It's not what's going on here in the classroom. Yeah, because then they sit in that and go, oh, okay. And then we move together, and they kind of have that consideration of each other. So
Yeah.
instead of just trying to hold it together and then feel that tension
Mm-hmm.
from me and go, why is Mrs. Klicka, shooting darts with her eyeballs at me,
Right.
So, mhm,
Yeah. Yeah. Oh.
yeah,
So with the synergistic play, that helps
hmm
us to kind of find more regulation, right? It's providing
yes,
space. What would be like
yeah,
a practical example of a way that we could do this in like a, I don't know, K-12 setting? I don't know if you have something that
hmm
you can do that's like elementary all the way. What would be
yeah,
something we could do to help ourselves and maybe help students?
yeah. So within this, what we're going to look at is a lot of again, our body. And so a lot of sensory pieces come into play. And so um, things that we're going to do, and actually it could be beyond that, but a lot of it on that initial, when I was thinking about that, especially at any age,
Yeah.
elementary, middle school, high school, is going, okay, body, what are some things that you really need?
Hmm.
And I'll tell you, our smell is amazing at this one. Our olfactory system is our quickest grounding tool.
Okay.
It's actually the only sense that can bypass our thalamus and go right
Wow.
into the core. Yeah, it's amazing. So
Okay.
if there's ever these moments of like dysregulation or again, kind of irritability or just anxiety, having a really awesome go-to smell is super, super awesome and effective.
Hmm.
Um, Having tactile things for yourself, whether it's even taking your shoes off and just having your toes kind of dig into the carpet at school. I don't know. I would often talk or teach sometimes with without shoes on,
Hmm.
and just embrace it and tell the kids, as long as your feet aren't completely gross, and I had middle school boys,
Yep.
then we're all welcome to take our shoes off and dig our feet into the ground together. Because it's great to invite them into it too. Um, and having music on at different times. I don't know if that's always allowed in classrooms, but sometimes having just
Yeah.
some low instrumental music,
Yes.
I
Yeah.
really feel, that helps kind of ground.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, so a lot of the physical, and then even just checking in and going, all right, how am I emotionally? And just telling ourselves, today is a hard day,
Mhm.
or I'm feeling extra squished today. And just
Mhm.
acknowledging it and knowing where it's coming from and validating that with ourselves
Yeah.
can be really huge. So,
Yeah. Do you
mhm,
ever take kids or even recommend for teachers to go beyond that in the moment in terms of recognizing or acknowledging the feeling and then going, okay, I'm going to give myself
mhm,
more grace? Or I
mhm.
don't know, what do you recommend that they do
Yeah,
once they acknowledge the feeling? Where do we
yeah.
go from
It
there?
just I chuckle because there was one, you guys have to remember middle school boys, right? That's all I
Yeah.
gotta say. I remember a specific class and they were so jittery. I think they either were coming right from lunch or PE or something. And they had all the feels, right? In this, and I'm like, oh my goodness. So we literally would get
And the
up
smells.
and we did, oh, all the smells. I had a little spritzer in my desk. I'll just say that. But we would do things together. And so acknowledging if maybe there was more something just pent up in us, I would literally sometimes take the boys down and they would do 1 or 2 laps
Ooh,
around
that's
the
good.
gym
Yeah.
together,
Hmm.
or we'd stand up in the classroom and we'd just shake our arms out and
Yeah.
um, really just letting ourselves feel what we needed to in the moment and then move through it, because to
Hmm.
just have it and go, okay, well, that's great. Now what? To say,
Yeah.
okay, or even as sometimes when there's just hard things going on in the world, taking and slowing down in the classroom
Hmm.
and just checking in with
Yeah.
each other and go, how are you guys really doing? This is maybe there's some hard things
Hmm.
going on. I know there's been a lot of fear, don't go too political, but like the school shootings and things that are very real to students and teachers,
Hmm.
and to just not acknowledge it is very incongruent, and to have that is really important. So,
Hmm. Oh, that's
yeah.
really good.
Hmm.
I know I'm working with a
Yeah.
ministry school right now, and one of the things that the director likes us to do is he calls it being hot, honest, open, and transparent.
Yeah.
And it just makes me think of that right
Oh, I
now
love that.
because it's like
Hmm.
the teacher having the freedom to say, like you did, hey guys, I'm feeling off today. My grandpa's in the
Hmm.
hospital, or whatever it is that's going on. So if we see me not acting like myself, it's because I'm internalizing some other things going on, being present,
Hmm.
but giving ourselves the freedom to do that, to be real. And then
Yes.
it kids watch, right? Sometimes they pick up way more than we realize.
Yes, they're very, very
And
aware.
but they learn how to go, oh, I have feelings, and how am
Hmm.
I going to deal with them? That I do have
Hmm.
control, self-control,
Hmm.
sometimes, and they're still learning
Yeah.
that very much.
Hmm.
But giving them some ways to, like, I don't know, like you're saying, I even think about, I used to call it just letting energy out, but you're right. It is
Yeah.
like giving them a chance to run around, take a lap around the field or whatever, could be getting rid of like pent up something that's just helping them to
Hmm.
feel more loose. And then they can
Hmm.
actually learn. And sometimes it's letting go of something hard and
Hmm.
like actually
Yeah.
understanding what's going on. Yeah.
Hmm.
It's really good.
And even as you said that, one of the main principles that we have for synergistic play therapy is authenticity, because without that, our brain just feels hijacked of that incongruency. And if you tell me, hey, everything's great or fine, and yet that's not what I'm getting from you, it just is going to hijack and it lingers. And so then we're really not present and
Hmm.
attuned to each other because there's that barrier.
Hmm.
And so,
Oh,
yeah,
that's really good. Do you
yeah.
have any, this is kind of thrown like random last second here, but do you have any testimonies
Sure.
of maybe teachers you worked with where they weren't aware of how they were feeling or how their body was, but once they got a
Mm,
hold of some like just the thought of like, oh, there's actually a continuum within me.
mhm.
And sometimes my bandwidth
Yeah.
is wide and sometimes it is small. Like how much
Hmm.
change have you seen, or do you have any testimonies of
Hmm.
Yeah, what they did to make that
Yeah.
switch.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. It's a mama, so I don't know if that can resonate too versus like
Yeah.
a teacher, but there's think about one of the ladies I've been meeting with for a while now, and she has an awesome testimony. She, has a history in her life of abuse from her mom growing up, and just a lot of mental hijack, and things that she felt like she always had to do for everybody else, and
Mm,
not anything for her, or she got the leftovers,
mhm.
and so and she's got several kids and a husband. And so one of the things that we've been working on is how to acknowledge what she needs so
Oh, that's
that
good.
she can be there, right, for her kids and her husband. And as simple, and you guys can kind of chuckle, but it was such a big breakthrough, even when there was one day where her husband left his dishes and on the table, and she said, "Hey, can you actually put those in the dishwasher?" I
That's
mean,
good.
so so
Yeah.
simple,
Yeah.
but so true, of like, I just need to acknowledge that I don't have to do it, and I don't have to do everything, and you can. And what that has led to these massive shifts for herself and her family, her career. I mean, it's just
Mm,
rippled out when it feels like sometimes so simple,
yeah.
of just acknowledging, oh my goodness, this is who I am. Often our identity can get wrapped up, as whether it's teachers, right, in our careers, or as husbands, wives, parents. And so
Mhm.
to say, I deserve to have what having my needs met too,
Yeah.
and that will help me be even more there for those that I'm serving,
Yeah.
family, students.
Yeah.
So,
Ooh,
hmm
that's huge, Jessica, because I just think
yeah.
about in the buildings that I worked in, often there was like, I want to say a savior complex, but it also led
Uh-huh.
to victim mentality. So like
Yes.
I'm doing all these things for people, but yet I'm lifting myself up for all of the ways that I've like self-sacrificed in order to take care of
Yes.
people. I remember sniffing it out as a young teacher and going, this is so sick because
hmm
if I'm getting my identity out of pouring myself out more than I want to, then I become this
hmm
like sacrifice that didn't want to happen even. And then I feel
Yeah.
resentful to
Yeah.
kids, my colleagues, my administrator, whatever it is that I didn't say no to. And then it becomes this like
Yeah.
kind of gross codependency sort of.
Yeah.
And then I'm, yeah, down this slippery
hmm
slope. And I sometimes
hmm
even say on here too is like at the end of the day, especially, but during the day, like letting go of the stuff. Like Jesus said, come to me, all you are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. But we can take on
hmm
the cares of the world and all the stuff. And I call
hmm
it ungodly responsibility for people.
Yeah.
But it's like
Yep.
I remember at the end of the day, I would like literally get in my car and I would like wipe my shoulders off, just
hmm
off both
Yep.
sides and just go, God, I just give you. And I would lay out all the things that I felt like I had picked up that day. And I felt like in the
hmm
car, I sometimes even open the windows to let it out, like this is the visual for me, like the wind in my hair, I'm
Yes.
done. But that I don't
hmm
have to heal anyone. I don't have to fix anything. Like I just came and did my job. I carried this presence of Jesus into my classroom. I got to be his
Yep.
hands and feet, but he's the one
Yep.
who brings healing and freedom and breakthrough in families. And even if I have a kid couch surfing because mom doesn't have a home. I can't fix that necessarily.
Yeah.
And especially if God hasn't asked me to dig my, and that's, because sometimes we get our
hmm
noses in things that we're really not supposed to, and we get ourselves
Yeah.
buried where we become incapacitated by not caring for
hmm
ourselves because we're caring so much for
hmm
other people. And I
Yes.
think that's the huge part of what you do. Jessica is
hmm
reminding people to be aware of like, where are you at right now?
Yeah.
Hey,
Yes. How are
teacher,
you?
are you
hmm
loving
Yeah.
yourself?
I know. Well, and I love what you said. And that's actually like my life verse, what you just said there from Matthew. I thought, oh,
Yeah.
I love it because it's so true. And even one of my awesome admin gals, who's become one of my best friends on my team, said in one of my reviews a couple years ago, she goes, I think Jessica believes that she has to be everything to everyone. And
Mm,
that's just not true. That's the Lord's. And
mhm.
so for us too, as we go into whatever space, to tell ourselves this is the Lord's. And I've had professors say you got to pray over your space at the end of your day and shut the door and leave it at his feet,
Ooh, that's good.
and
I
Yeah.
love that. Say
Yeah.
that again one more time.
hmm
This is good.
So pray over your space. Like for us, he'd say pray over your files of your people. I envision, you guys praying over your desks or your,
Yeah.
your homework files or, whatever pieces you have,
Yeah.
and then shutting the door and saying, Lord, they're yours.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, that's good. Yeah, you're
yeah.
physically saying goodbye. Okay, I'm gonna
hmm
go take care of
Yeah.
myself now. Get some
Yes.
exercise, breathe, eat food, be with my family, have friendship,
Yeah. Yes.
have a life.
Transition.
Yes.
Right. All the pieces.
Yes.
Mm,
Well, you talked a little bit about grounding our nervous system. And when
yeah.
you're talking about that, I know the first time I was like, oh, this makes me think of like grounding like electricity so that it's not hot
Yeah.
wires flying everywhere. Will you talk a little bit more about this? I mean, you talked about taking off our shoes, letting
hmm
our feet sink in the ground, our students to be able to do that if it doesn't smell too
hmm
much.
Right.
But
Yes.
what does that really do? I know you love science. What's the behind
Yeah.
with that?
hmm So really what it's doing is I love talking about how much our brain is doing and firing at any, given second. There's billions, if not trillions, right, of firing. And so the best case, oh, you guys are going to cringe at the statistic. The best attunement that the most aware caregiver, teacher, right, parent, any of the roles we're in with someone else, the best we can do is 30% in the
Ooh,
pocket. I
ooh,
know. It's really
wow.
sad. So to also tell ourselves to do the best we can, how do we stay connected to ourselves? And so again, I'll say it's so much through the body. And in therapy, we call it bottom up because it
Hmm.
goes from our limbic center in the back of
Okay.
our brain to our
Okay.
front to our prefrontal. And
Okay.
so often we want to exist from top to bottom, which is hard because our thought patterns get hijacked by our emotional state, our limbic center, and our
Okay.
physical state.
Okay.
So to be able to really start with the limbic center, start with your emotion state, start with your physical,
Hmm.
and then travel up will help with that grounding piece of it. So that's where the body comes into play and go,
Okay.
okay, am I acknowledging all the things you said, that
Hmm.
I'm tired or that I'm hungry or, I'm uncomfortable in these, high heels. So I'm going to kick them off a little bit
Hmm.
during a break. Instead of just saying, you know what, I have to buckle down and just push through because you're disconnecting really from yourself. And that's not helpful at the end of
Hmm.
the day. It stores and it builds on us. And that's where another thing I'll throw out is a book called Burnout, and it's written by twin sisters. And there's a podcast I could talk about from Brene Brown called Unlocking Us. But they
Okay.
talk about how, and they even mentioned this, you guys. I was in the store listening to the podcast, and I stopped by the chips when they mentioned this because I thought, oh my gosh, this is real. They said, you ever get to a break, right? Even as teachers, they said you get to a holiday break and all of a sudden you're just sick. You get a cold. And I was like, yes, every time. Or
Hmm.
summer break, right? Christmas break. And they said, what happens is we take all those things we ignore
Hmm.
throughout our day, throughout our weeks and months, and it just, our body still takes it in, all those things. And we disengage, we don't acknowledge. And then at the end, and we have a break, guess what? That trailer full of all the things we've been storing comes and slams into us and goes,
Oh,
hi, remember me? I'm
yeah.
still here. And
Ooh,
we get sick. Our body gets hijacked because it
yeah.
says, you're not going to ignore me anymore.
Yeah. I'm
So
here.
I'm here.
Oh my
Hi.
gosh. And then there's the
Mm-hmm.
whole side with even like physical health in terms of what we eat, because sugar brings our immunity down. And so our immune
Yep.
system is fighting
Oh.
just to keep moving because we've not been caring for our bodies or our thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And then that
Yep.
just ramps everything up even more.
Yeah.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Just spins it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So do you recommend, because I'm just thinking of some like simple things that maybe even people could begin doing, like giving
Mm-hmm.
your thinking of how to let go of the day. You know, there's the wipe off your shoulders, like I
Yeah.
was talking about, but even giving
Mm-hmm.
yourself like, I'm going to walk around the building during lunch break for five
Yeah.
minutes
Yes.
and even prayer walking.
Yes.
And
Yeah, this is awesome. And I again do one more book throw out
yeah,
is
please.
a book called The Power of Full Engagement. And the book was written by Olympic coaches. And so they talk about, within high performing, that our athletes, and I always like to use Michael Phelps because everybody remembers him,
Hmm.
that if you were to ask Michael Phelps, hey, let's go swim and do sprints for 8 hours, he's not going to make it the full 8 hours. He's going to blah, 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 right, and drown. And so what they do is they talk about high intensity interval training, and that it involves sprinting and recovery,
Hmm.
sprinting and recovery. And yet, for us in our world as teachers, we ask ourselves, hey, let's go out and just sprint through your day and never stop or never really have a recovery moment. And so it leads to burnout and compassion fatigue and all these different things that come at us. So
Yeah.
their suggestions are pay attention to what goes into those recovery moments, just like you're saying,
Yeah.
and they don't have to be huge. I often talk to people and they're like, oh, I've got a vacation, in 2 weeks. I'm pushing until then. I thought, oh man, you don't have to wait for a full week off. You can
Hmm.
do it all throughout your day. And so looking for moments where it is a 5-10 minute break,
Hmm.
really actually taking a lunch. I know it's a chronic thing with the
Yes.
teacher land. We just
Hmm.
work through our lunch,
Yeah.
whether because we have lunch duty or because we're sitting there grading papers, trying to get as much done as we can. And, we stay in our classroom even, or we isolate. And so
Hmm.
looking at, all right, what are things that I need? And I call them my 4 buckets, and they talk about this in the book too, is our physical, our mental, our emotional, and our spiritual, and asking ourselves, which of my buckets needs a little attention?
Yeah.
Where can I pour some things in? And what does that look like? And just like you said, like doing a prayer walk, you're potentially hitting your physical
Hmm.
and your spiritual, maybe even your emotional, because you go, man, Lord, I just need to surrender this because it's
Yeah.
weighing on my heart. So
Yeah.
you're hitting multiple buckets in a
Hmm.
5-10 minute prayer walk and maybe listening to some worship music.
Yeah.
So
Oh, that's really
mm-hmm,
good. Yay.
yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Are there any other practical strategies, Jessica, that you would recommend for helping us to just um, continue to find keys that would help loosen the
Mm-hmm.
pressure of the day that you would recommend?
Yeah. I think the big thing as I think about that is telling ourselves it's okay to slow down. It's okay to take,
That's good.
some space.
Hmm.
And it's okay to turn off the noise. And
Mm,
that's something, that even through that synergetic play therapy, she would talk about how often we fill our space with busyness, with noise, distraction. And that really keeps us out of taking and really noticing our stuff.
hmm.
So really saying, all right, I'm going to dedicate, time here, here, and here. And I'm going to turn off the distractions. I'm going to turn off the radio, even as I'm driving. Oh my goodness, that's a challenge. But to
Yeah.
sit in it and go, okay, I'm just going to sit with myself
Hmm.
and the Lord, and I'm going to feel what I'm feeling in my body. I'm going to acknowledge my emotional state right now, and I'm going to enter the day right with a full bucket,
Hmm.
and at the end of the day too, to just say, how do I transition, while
Yeah.
out of it, leave things with the Lord. He said, brush it off
Yeah.
and go have an enjoyable evening where you're not taking all the stressors of your day home with
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, that's so
mm-hmm.
good. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would just encourage kingdom educators here too to just ask the Lord how you de-stress well, because sometimes we forget to even
Mm-hmm.
recognize how we best de-stress.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I tell
What
people
you need.
find things that are restorative
Mm.
and not just keeps you at the same level. Because often we've depleted throughout the day
Mhm.
and we sit down and I hear it all the time. Well, I got home and I just turned on Netflix or I just, and it keeps them, but it's not restorative. So what is
Yeah.
pouring in to your buckets, not just keeping them at the same level.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, that's a really good
mm-hmm.
reminder. Yeah. And that also
Yeah.
refers to the noise too, like allowing
Yes.
silence. I was
Mm-hmm.
thinking of one more thing too that I feel like I've noticed just as a reminder as I've been in subbing a little bit, and that's that I think we have to be aware as educators that there can be a competition or comparison, and comparison can
Oh,
kill, especially
yes.
when it comes to whether we take the breaks or not. Because if all of
Mm-hmm.
our teammates are working through
Yeah.
lunch and we know like we're going to blow up that afternoon if we don't
Yeah.
take a break, or we need to eat because our glucose levels are jacked,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
then we
Yep.
need to do that and
Mm-hmm.
allow ourselves to just, yeah, to take the break and take
Take a
care of
break.
ourselves. And I actually wonder if it would set a really healthy precedence
Help,
amongst
but yeah.
people. And even them
Mm-hmm.
going, wow, she has or he has very good boundaries. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
I should try that. You might
Yes.
actually encourage more health.
Mm-hmm. I love this. You could take this one. They call that comparative suffering. And it's
Ooh,
not, I
okay.
know, no healthiness comes out of that. So
Yeah.
to say there's not a winner of the one that suffers the most, we want to like, I love what you said, set the trend, the other direction, set
Yeah.
some boundaries. And it can get contagious, when people say, hey, let's leave the homework for a little bit. Let's go on a walk around, you
Yeah.
know, the school and or go out. We had a pond by ours, so we could go out and walk around the pond, which was so awesome. But not
Yeah.
everybody gets that. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
And even
Mm-hmm.
commending those of you, I know there's some listeners and I've heard you share some of this is that when we notice our kids need to have a break or they feel too
Mm-hmm.
anxious, to not be afraid to put away the test prep materials. That was one of the examples that one of the teachers gave on here.
Oh
Test prep
yeah.
materials so that the kids could spend some time on identity and purpose. And then like
Mm-hmm.
going through encouragement and then even making up a song together, like allowing
Yeah.
that like creativity to come back and reestablishing
Mm-hmm.
that they're all valued, and then we come from that place and there's so much more success in general with learning.
Yes.
But that takes I think trust that the learning minutes are going to be used in a way that's
Yeah.
useful, but like freeing ourselves
Mm.
from the ball and chain of I have to
Yeah.
do it this way. Because I know I always felt
Mm-hmm.
that when I was teaching full time, especially in the very beginning. I was like, if I don't grade every single paper, and it's like, I don't know. Ask the
Yeah.
Lord. Because some of the papers,
Yes.
I'm not sure that they do need to be graded. It might be more for
Yeah.
practice, and it might be better if they
Mm-hmm.
graded them, not you, the students.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, and
And so, what
everybody
can you
loved
take off your back? Yeah.
a good completion grade once in a while to just
Yes.
say you did it, and
Yeah.
I don't need to spend time checking every single answer. Oh,
Yes.
yeah. It's
Yeah.
it's
So,
not a bad practice. Mm-hmm.
yes. Well, Jessica, thank you so much for your time today and giving us some tips
Yeah.
and tricks for recognizing what's going on and just even giving, I think for some, like the freedom to actually check in with themselves and recognize, like, oh, okay, I'm a real
Yeah.
person with real needs that need to be attended
Those
to.
real
And
needs.
it's so important that
Yeah.
I'm healthy so that I can be a healthy giver. Because
That's
that's what we do.
right. Yeah.
Our job is very much serving. And so we need to make sure that
Mm-hmm.
we are served too. So thanks for
Mm-hmm.
the
Yeah.
testimony you shared from the mama and the science
Yeah.
bits. It's all really useful.
Absolutely.
So,
No, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
yes,
It's been
yes.
fun.